if you are in that position and you don't understand why the other party is wanting to get a divorce, you are struggling with that, go and seek the help that will help you come to grips with that. You may never understand what the other person was thinking. We haven't gotten that far, right? AI, it's come pretty far, right? But it's not to the place where we can read somebody else's mind. All right, well, welcome back to the No Judgement Family Law Podcast. Today we're going to be switching it up a little bit. We received a comment from one of you out there, and so we wanted to address that. That's something that I'm really excited about in terms of being able to interact with you all. So today we received a comment on one of our previous videos. I'll just read it here real quickly. I'm really struggling and could use your thoughts. Just got back from deployment, and now I'm going through a divorce. It's hitting me hard. My wife seems done with me emotionally, and I'm trying to convince her to stay, but it's not working. We have a 10-year-old daughter, and I want her to grow up with both parents like I did, but my wife doesn't see it my way. Any advice on how to handle this? First of all, that's a tough situation to be in. I have potential clients coming in all the time who are in the same situation. A lot of times, only one party is really wanting to move forward with a divorce. The other party wants to try and save the marriage. So there's a number of things that can be done. Obviously, the first step is seeing if you can get someone who you trust or maybe professional help, a therapist, a counselor, going to marriage counseling, okay, marriage therapy. That is, generally the first step. And maybe it's not even a therapist. Maybe it is clergy. Maybe it's a good friend or, another couple that you all trust. But getting that outside help, that's step number one if both sides are interested. If both sides aren't interested, you can't force the other party to do that. So then we look at, well, what are the other options, legally speaking? There's a divorce, what we call a dissolution of marriage. Here in Missouri, I'm sure a lot of other states call it the same thing, but a dissolution of marriage, that sounds like what this individual's wife has filed, a petition. You, as the respondent, the person or the defendant, depending on your jurisdiction, you can file your answer. And one of the things, particularly here in Missouri, one of the things that is required to be alleged is that the marriage is irretrievably broken and cannot be preserved. So if you are not of that opinion, if you do not believe that your marriage is irretrievably broken and you believe it can be preserved, then in your answer, you would deny that allegation. Now, you may want to file your own cross petition. And you think, well, I don't want a divorce, but clearly there's some sort of issue here where, she wants to be separated. So I need to protect myself financially. I need to protect myself when it comes to custody, child support, maintenance, all of the issues that get addressed in a legal proceeding. So what do you do? Well, here in Missouri at least, and I believe in every other state, there is what's called a legal separation. A legal separation, in essence, is a divorce without the divorce. We are going to address all of the issues that are in a divorce case. So property division, custody, child support, maintenance, or alimony. We're going to address all of those situations, but the marriage is not actually dissolved. The parties are legally separated, so we're going to separate your finances. We're going to determine all of those things that we just talked about, but the marriage is not dissolved. Now, here in Missouri, there's actually case law on this that talks about if one of the parties files for a divorce, the other party files for a legal separation, the court must enter a legal separation. Now, practically speaking, that may just be buying yourself a few months. Once that few month time period lapses, the other party can come back and say, look, we've remained separated for these 3 months. It's 90 days here in Missouri. We've remained separated for these 3 months. There is no longer a hope that this marriage can be preserved, and I would like to convert the legal separation into a dissolution. I want to dissolve my marriage. At that point, the court is going to hear evidence about why the marriage is irretrievably broken, and then they're going to, in all likelihood, dissolve the marriage. You may say, well, that just seems silly. Why would I spend that extra money for another 3 months and then the same thing's going to happen? And that's a valid question. If you truly believe, though, that your marriage is not irretrievably broken and you want to take that position with the court, then the court has a mechanism to deal with that, to work with that. So that's something that you may be able to do. There's other important reasons, too, why you may not want to agree to a dissolution when you do not believe that the marriage is irretrievably broken. Some strategic reasons why you may not want to, in terms of bifurcating a divorce, or basically there's the possibility that the court could enter a judgment dissolving the marriage before it addresses all of the other issues on the case. There's some specific circumstances where that may be relevant to your case from a strategic standpoint, so that's something you would want to talk with your attorney about. But legal separation is an alternative option to address those issues and make an affirmative request to the court in terms of the other things like custody, child support, maintenance, property division, without actually asking the court to dissolve your marriage. So if that's something that you are adamantly opposed to, then a legal separation might be the route for you to go in terms of your pleadings to file with the court. The last thing, though, that you kind of want to make sure you are at least acknowledging for the court, and I say this because of the way that it could have an effect on some of the other parts of the case, particularly custody, is that you really have to acknowledge the reality of the situation. And by that, I mean, I've had conversations before where if we say, Judge, the marriage is not irretrievably broken, it can be preserved, and the other party says, Judge, no, it's not. I don't want to remain married to this person. I want a divorce. I want out of this marriage. The reality of that situation is that if that other person does not want to be a part of the marriage anymore, you can't force somebody to remain married to you. You just can't. It's not allowed. So being able to acknowledge the reality of that situation is going to be important when it comes to the custody side. Because if you are taking a position where the court is going to question your rationality, right? If you're coming in and you're saying, well, look, Judge, we can make it work. If she just gives me a chance, if she just does what I tell her, if she, and you start getting into these arguments where the judge could start to question, what are your motives here? Particularly if it's a case where abuse is being alleged, where there's allegations about being controlling, those sort of things. And you're coming into court and you're saying, I understand that the other side doesn't want to be married to me anymore, but I'm not going to capitulate to that because X, Y, or Z. And those reasons are not just, really solid reasons. There's the potential for that to have an impact on how the judge views your willingness to accept the reality of a situation and how that could have a negative impact on custody situations. So you have to sort of balance the acknowledging the reality of the situation with what your personal beliefs might be, whether those are just your view of the marriage and it being able to be preserved, or whether it be your religious views on divorce and dissolving a marriage. I'm definitely not here to tell anybody that their religious views on the propriety of divorce are inaccurate or inappropriate, okay? Furthest from it. That's the whole point of this podcast, is no judgment on that. But you also have to look at it the way that the court is going to be looking at it. And so if you come in and you say, look, judge, my client, this is me, let's say I'm in there arguing, and I say, my client does not believe, he has a deeply held religious belief that divorce is not an option. So we filed for legal separation. Judge says, okay. The opposing party wants a divorce, and they say the marriage is irretrievably broken, and I'm not going to force somebody to say, Judge, we understand that, but this is my client's deeply held religious belief, and for that reason, he cannot agree that the marriage is irretrievably broken. Okay, that's okay, and I think the court has to respect that. But that being said, it's not going to be in and of itself something that is going to preclude the court from moving forward with ultimately dissolving the marriage, whether that be immediately or whether that be 3 months from the entry of a legal separation. The other thing that I wanted to address with that question, though, is, the desire of the commentator to have the child grow up in a house with 2 parents. That's a great desire to have. I think that, psychologists tell us that is what is, generally speaking, most beneficial for a child, is to grow up, have both parents in the same household. That's the ideal family unit, but it doesn't always work out. And that is disappointing when it happens. I tell people all the time, I am not here to divorce parties who do not need to be divorced. I'm not here to convince somebody to get a divorce when they are on the fence about whether or not they should get a divorce. But ultimately, if one of the parties wants to get a divorce and believes that the marriage is irretrievably broken, I also acknowledge the reality of that situation. And I think that's something that if you find yourself in that situation, I know I seem to be coming back to the mental health aspect a lot, but that's because it does play a huge part in the family law process. But if you are in that position and you don't understand why the other party is wanting to get a divorce, you are struggling with that, go and seek the help that will help you come to grips with that. You may never understand what the other person was thinking. We haven't gotten that far, right? AI, it's come pretty far, right? But it's not to the place where we can read somebody else's mind. And so, if they're just saying, well, I just feel that way, well, maybe they do. I don't know. But going out and seeking that additional help to be able to acknowledge, accept, and understand that is the situation that you're living in now, and then to, try and turn that into a positive by doing the things that will help you be the best father or mother that you can for your child, regardless of the situation that you're actually in. That is the direction that you want to be facing. That is the direction you want to be going, rather than sort of stewing in the disappointment, the anger, the frustration that comes along with being that party who may not want to be going forward with a divorce. So a very pertinent question, very good question. I mean, that's something that a lot of people are going through. And, if you're going through something as it relates to a family law situation, don't be afraid to comment, just like this commentator. We love to get these sort of comments. If you have that question, odds are somebody else has that question too. So don't hesitate to comment. Don't hesitate to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We want more comments here. We want to hear from you, real life situations. It's fun to talk about, celebrities and what's going on in their lives, and these huge inflated numbers or these crazy situations. And we'll be talking about those too. Don't get me wrong. But every once in a while we'll also be touching on these comments, what I will call from real people, from real life situations that are going to be situations that you may be going through yourself. So reach out, let us know, and until next time, no judgment here.